There's something kind of strange about money. You might not be overspending. You're not living some extravagant lifestyle either. But somehow, by the end of the month, you still feel like something's missing. Not exactly money, more like a lack of control. I've noticed something. A lot of people don't actually struggle with making money. They struggle with understanding what's really happening to their money. And what's interesting is that problem isn't about numbers. It's about something much more invisible. There's a state I see over and over again. At night, after a long day of work, you open your phone, check your account. Nothing seems wrong. You still have money. Your spending is still reasonable. But in your head, there's this vague thought, something feels off. You start thinking back, what did I even spend this week? Was there anything I shouldn't have bought? And then you realize you don't really remember clearly, not because you spent too much, but because everything happened so smoothly. No big shocks, no major unexpected expenses, but your money keeps going down steadily, quietly. Most people don't realize that. It's the things that don't stand out that make them lose control the fastest. Main idea. 1. You don't lose money from big decisions. You lose it when you stop feeling the small ones. I've realized something most people overlook. You rarely run into financial problems because of one big decision. It's not because you bought something too expensive. It's not because you made one bad investment. It's because you slowly stop feeling the small decisions. Here's a simple example. You subscribe to an online service. It's just a small monthly fee. At the time, you think it's nothing. A few weeks later, you add another one, then another small convenience. Each one makes sense. Each one has a reason. Nothing feels like a mistake. But here's the interesting part. Your brain doesn't register these as serious spending because they're not painful enough. And when there's no sense of pain, your attention doesn't activate. Slowly, you enter a very dangerous state. You're still spending money, but you no longer feel like you're spending it. That's when things start drifting. Not because you lack discipline, but because part of your awareness system has quietly shut off. And when you can't clearly feel those small outflows, your finances will always feel a bit vague, uncertain, not fully under control. That's why some people earn enough, but still feel like something's missing. It's not that they lack money. They've lost connection with how their money is actually leaving. The key takeaway is this. You don't lose control because you spend too much. You lose control when you stop feeling that you're spending. Main idea 2. Financial pressure doesn't come from how much you spend. It comes from how many commitments you're carrying. I've noticed something a bit paradoxical. Some people don't spend that much, but they constantly feel financial pressure, while others spend about the same and feel totally fine. The difference isn't the amount, it's the structure of their spending. More specifically, the number of financial commitments they carry each month. For example, 2 people both make the same income, both spend the same amount, but they feel completely different. One person, flexible spending, not many fixed obligations, can adjust when needed. The other, most of that spending is locked in. Rent, subscriptions, payments, recurring costs. And here's the key moment. The second person has lost flexibility. Most people don't realize financial pressure doesn't show up when you spend. It shows up when you lose the ability to change how you spend, when you can't cut back quickly, when you can't adapt when something happens. Even if your income is stable, you still feel stuck. I've realized that feeling of being tight with money usually isn't about not having enough. It's about living inside a system where everything has already been decided. Every month, money goes out automatically. You don't even make decisions anymore. It sounds convenient, but what's interesting is the fewer decisions you make, the less control you feel. That's why Some people don't spend much, but still feel pressure because they're carrying too many commitments, not big ones, but a lot of small ones, stacked on top of each other. The key takeaway: financial pressure isn't about how much you spend. It's about how much freedom you still have to change your spending. Main idea 3: feeling stable with money can actually make you lose awareness the fastest. I've noticed something very subtle, but incredibly important. Most people don't run into financial problems when things are hard. They run into problems when things start to feel a little easier. It sounds counterintuitive, but think about it. When money is tight, you're careful. You think before spending. You remember what you bought. You stay alert. But when your income improves a bit, or life feels more comfortable, something small changes. You start paying less attention to money. Not on purpose. It happens naturally. You stop checking every expense. You stop thinking too long before decisions. You start believing, it's fine. And here's the interesting part. That feeling of, it's fine, turns off your internal warning system. Nothing goes wrong immediately. There are no obvious signs. It's just, you pay less attention, you control less, and small expenses start stacking up. I've seen this happen so many times. No big financial shock. Just one day, people look back and think, why don't I have as much left as before? Most people don't realize financial decline rarely starts with a big mistake. It starts when you stop paying attention because everything seems okay. And that's the dangerous part, because when things are hard, you automatically become alert again. But when things feel fine, nothing forces you to look closer. And that's when your financial system quietly shifts out of your control. The key takeaway: you're not most vulnerable when you lack money. You're most vulnerable when you feel like you're doing fine. Main idea 4: the reason you never feel like it's enough isn't money. It's that you don't know where your finish line is. I've realized something people rarely say out loud. You can be earning more stable than before, but inside, you still feel like maybe it's still not enough. What's interesting is that feeling doesn't go away when you make more money. It just follows you. For example, at a lower income level, you might think, if I just reach this number, I'll feel secure. But once you get there, a new thought appears. Maybe I need a little more to really feel comfortable. And just like that, your idea of enough keeps moving forward. Most people don't realize your brain isn't designed to naturally feel enough. It's designed to compare to your past, to other people, to an imagined better version of yourself. And without a clear finish line, every number becomes blurry. You don't know when you're doing well. You don't know when to stop and enjoy. You only know you should probably push a little more. I've noticed many people aren't actually lacking money. They're lacking a personal definition of enough. And without that, you live in a constant state of almost enough. And almost enough is exhausting. It makes you always want a little more, never feel fully secure, always delay peace of mind. That's why some people achieve a lot but still don't feel at ease, not because they lack, but because they don't know what enough means for them. The key takeaway: you don't feel like you're lacking because you have too little. You feel that way because you've never decided what enough actually is. Main idea 5: you're not really controlling money. You're controlling how you feel when you look at it. I've noticed something most people get wrong. They think managing money is about controlling numbers, how much you spend, how much you save, how much you invest. Sounds logical. But here's the interesting part. Most of your financial behavior isn't driven by numbers. It's driven by how you feel when you look at those numbers. Here's a simple example. Some days you open your account, see your balance, and you feel fine. You're willing to spend. You don't overthink it. But other days, same number, barely changed, and suddenly you think, I probably shouldn't spend right now. The number didn't change, but your behavior did. Most people don't realize they're not reacting to money. They're reacting to how they feel about money in that moment. If you had a good day, you spend more easily. If you're stressed about work, you tighten up. If you just saw someone doing better than you might start spending in a way that balances out how you feel. I've realized money doesn't trigger behavior. Emotion does. Money is just the excuse. That's why some people understand finance really well but still lose control in certain moments. Not because they don't know, but because in that moment, their emotions are stronger than their logic. And this is the key point. You can try to control money with logic, but if you don't understand how emotions shape your decisions, you'll always feel like, I know what I should do, but I don't always do it. The takeaway: you don't fail because you don't understand money. You fail because you don't realize your emotions are driving how you use it. Main idea 6. You don't lose money from bad decisions. You lose it when you don't realize you've changed your lifestyle. I've noticed something that's really hard to see, but happens to a lot of people. You don't suddenly start spending more. You just slowly change how you live. At first, everything makes sense. You upgrade something small. You choose a slightly better option. You pick convenience over inconvenience. Every decision feels reasonable. For example, you start eating at places that feel just a bit nicer, not fancy, just more comfortable. You choose services that save you time. You prioritize convenience. Everything makes sense. But here's the interesting part. You're not just changing decisions, you're changing your standard of living. And once that standard shifts, everything else shifts with it. What used to be optional becomes normal. What used to be occasional becomes expected. Most people don't realize money doesn't disappear because of bad decisions. It disappears because you've built a new lifestyle that you no longer see as a choice. That's why, when you look back, you don't see anything wrong. Everything made sense. But overall, it went out of control. I've realized financial pressure doesn't come from bad decisions. It comes from a series of good decisions that combined together create a completely different spending system. And the most dangerous part is, you don't notice it happening because it doesn't happen in one day. It happens slowly, logically, and very easy to accept. The takeaway: you don't lose control because you made bad choices. You lose control when you don't realize you've shifted into a more expensive way of living. Main idea 7. You're not actually lacking money. You're lacking breathing room. I've realized something very simple, but it completely changes how you see money. Two people can earn about the same, spend about the same, but their financial experience feels completely different. One feels tense. The other feels relaxed. The difference usually isn't income. It's something most people overlook: breathing room. Not in your bank account, but the gap between what you have to spend and what you can actually choose to spend. For example, if you make a certain amount each month and almost all of it is locked into fixed expenses, you have very little room to adjust. Even a small disruption creates pressure immediately. Now compare that to someone else. Same income, but fewer fixed commitments. They have more room. What's interesting is they don't just have more money to use. They have a stronger sense of control. Most people don't realize what makes you feel financially tight isn't how much money you have. It's how much room you have to move. When that space is small, every decision feels heavy. You overthink. You hesitate. You feel constant risk. When that space is bigger, you don't need to be richer. You just need more freedom to choose. I've realized feeling at ease financially doesn't come from having more money. It comes from having enough space to not feel cornered. And here's the important part. A lot of people try to earn more, but immediately fill that space as soon as it appears. Income goes up, leads to lifestyle goes up, leads to space stays the same. So even though they earn more, they feel exactly the same. The takeaway: you don't need more money to feel better. You need more space in how you use it. Main idea 8. What exhausts you about money isn't lack. It's having to think about it all the time. I've noticed something people don't often say out loud. What makes money exhausting isn't when you don't have it. It's when you have to think about it constantly. You've probably experienced this. No major financial problems, no big debt, but in your head, there's always a quiet loop running. Should I buy this? Am I okay this month? What if something happens? What's interesting is these thoughts aren't huge, but they show up often, and that repetition is what drains you. Most people don't realize financial pressure doesn't just come from numbers. It comes from how often you have to think about money. If every spending decision requires you to pause, think, calculate, then even small amounts feel heavy. On the other hand, some people spend at similar levels, but don't overthink every decision, not because they're careless, but because their financial system is clear enough that they don't have to recheck everything. I've realized the real goal of money isn't to have more of it, it's to think about it less. But here's the irony. The more people try to control money without a system, the more they end up thinking about it, because they're tracking every small decision instead of building clarity. And when everything requires attention, your mind never rests. That's why some people aren't poor, but still feel mentally drained about money. Not because they lack money, but because they lack quiet space in their mind when it comes to money. The takeaway: you're not tired because you have too little money. You're tired because money is taking up too much mental space. I've realized most money problems don't start with how much you earn. They start with how you experience money every day. Do you feel your small expenses? Are you carrying too many commitments? Have you lost awareness because things seem fine? Do you know what enough means to you? Are your emotions driving your decisions? Have you unknowingly changed your lifestyle? Do you still have breathing room? And are you thinking about money too often? What's interesting is none of these show up on a spreadsheet. No app tracks them. No number warns you. But they determine whether you truly have control or not. I've realized money isn't a problem to solve. It's a system you live with every day. And once you start seeing that system clearly, you don't have to change everything immediately. But you'll know where you are and what's really going on. Final thought: you don't need to control every dollar. You just need to understand how money is shaping your life. If this feels familiar, you're probably not the only one. And if you want to understand money in a way that actually makes sense in real life, you can follow the channel. We don't talk about money in a loud way here. We talk about it in a way you can actually understand and use.